Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Valve Accessories and Controls. We're glad to have you all here today, and we'd love to see who all is with us. So whenever you get logged on, if you could, drop your name in the right-hand side in the chat bar. You can even tell us who you're with. We'd love to see where everyone's from. And today I have Scott, and he's going to talk about our digital product, the D500. Last week we did D400, and so this week he's going to talk about some of the procedures for the 500, some tips, mounting, calibration. And so once we get some people logged on, we'll go ahead and get started with that.
All right, we're going to get everybody a few minutes here to get logged on, make sure everything's working right. All right, everybody. Like I said, we're going to give a few more minutes. We may start up here a little bit. A lot of what we're going to be going over today is going to be about the D500. Last week, we went over the D400. A lot of the things will apply to both. Quite similar units. D500 is slightly more advanced, has a few more features and options available. Some things it doesn't do that the D400 has available. But we'll kind of start off with some of the basics. The D500 is a NEMA 4X positioner. It's available with IS, intrinsic safety, and standard general purpose units. This D500 is not available with explosion-proof housing. The only explosion protection available is intrinsic safety. The D500 has a little simpler user interface compared to the D400, as the display, as we'll go over in a minute, it's a little easier to just read. It's not really a menu structure. You just go through the menus. You don't have to have a cheat sheet to kind of help you follow along with it. This unit that we have in front of us here, it's all D400s and D500s have the F05 bolt pattern on the bottom. So if you have a 400 and you want to convert to a 500, it's as simple as taking it off, putting the D500 in its place. All D500s are rotary or analog. We handle that with just how we mount it in the mounting kit. Today, we're going to be showing how it works on a rotary valve. But if you look behind us, you'll see a couple of different options that we have them mounted on linear as well. This particular unit is a basic D500. D500 has pressure switches available. So if you go into advanced diagnostics and you need a little more information, it has that available. The D500 has a higher maximum supply pressure. The maximum supply pressure for the D500 is 145 PSI versus 90 on the D400. So it also has a little better air delivery and is very low air consumption. It is less than 0.015 SCFM. So that's 15 thousandths of a standard cubic foot of air per minute or less. So we published kind of a worst case scenario.
Scott, can you go back and talk a little bit more about the housing with intrinsically safe and how it's not explosion proof?
If you noticed, the housing on this unit is very small, very thin. It's a robust, sturdy housing. It's made of aluminum, but it has a very thin gasket surface. Generally, your explosion-proof housings are very big, very heavy, have really wide flanges, big, long flame paths. So that there is no difference in the housing for an IS versus a standard unit versus an explosion-proof unit like we saw the other day on the D400, where it has a really thick housing. It's very heavy. So intrinsic safety, that explosion protection is achieved by adding Zener barriers. It's all about the installation. It's not the housing of the unit. So without the barriers in place, it really isn't any good. It's no better than a general purpose unit. But one thing, so that's the basics of the IS versus general purpose. On this particular unit, these things allow, the D500 allows for expansion. If you get a standard unit and you want to add feedback, the feedback cards or little cards, they go in, there's two spots for modules to go in. The module just goes in, clicks in place, and you tighten down a set screw right here. And now your IO card, that's a analog output card, has been added. There are options to add mechanical switches, just like on the D400, that it mounts on top of the card. The card mounts on top of the plate here, cam screw in place, and the indicator takes its place. So now we've gone over a couple of the options, kind of looked at the D400. We're going to talk about mounting. Just like on the 500 or 400, on the 500, it has a potentiometer. It's a potentiometer inside. And on the back, the 500 is good for 20 to 270 degrees. Even though it's rated for 270 degrees, we like to try to operate in the same A to B quadrant where we add the stickers on the back. That way we know for sure, if we pay attention to how a unit is mounted, that it works from that A to B. We know it's going to work and we know it's going to calibrate. So like we said, we've got a unit here. It's set up currently fully closed. As it rotates counterclockwise, it will go open. And what we would do is set our pointer on our A, rotate it 90 degrees counterclockwise. We know we're pointing in the B quadrant, so we know we're good. We'll reset at A. What we would do is we would put our spindle on, tighten our set screws, making sure that our spindle is in the right arrangement. We would mount it on our actuator, run our bolts in, and we're good to go to start calibrating once we tube it up. Same as on the D400, output 1 will be going to our driving open port. Output 2 will connect to our driving closed port. D500s, just as the D400, they are offered in double acting and single acting. So you have to determine which you're going to be using as to which one you want to order. The D400 and the D500, single acting is going to be able to be used only on single acting actuators. Double acting, you can use on either. You could plug the second port, but if you have a double acting actuator, make sure you get a D500 that is double acting. So now we will look at calibrating a unit or go through the setup of a unit. On this unit, currently we have 4 milliamps on it. We've powered up the unit. We've mounted up our unit. It's going to be the same as on the rack and pinion. This one we have a K-torque actuator, rotary actuator. We are going 4 milliamps closed, 20 milliamps open towards the counterclockwise direction driving open. On initial setup, what we will do is we have a few buttons here. They're a little simpler to use. What we'll do is press the button to the right, and that's going to pull up our menu, our configuration, and our operating modes. Everywhere you see on the side here, every dot that is clicked or has the black dot in the center, we know that that is what is selected. So what we're going to do once we initially install and tube our positioner to make sure that it's going to operate properly, we're going to highlight manual sensor. We're going to click OK. What that's going to do is make sure that it highlights the little check mark there, and we're set to work manual mode. So we'll go back into our main screen, and what the display is showing now is just showing degrees of rotation that's reading off of the potentiometer. Now we'll press a button and operate the unit. And we're operating between negative and positive 57, so we know we're within our operating range. And now the unit we know is going to be able to operate, and we'll go through the calibration properly. If you notice, as I press the down button on the right-hand side of the screen in the lower corner, it may be hard to tell, but you'll see that there's a couple arrows. If you push it at the same time as the up or down button, it's like a speed up button. Now we've stroked the valve. We know we have stroked fully, and we're in the negative to positive 57 range. So we know for certain that it will calibrate. If we go back to our operator, we're going to go back to our operator mode. And if you notice on the top, there is an auto adjust. If we were going to go through a calibration now, what we would do is we just hit OK and hold it through a countdown, and it'll start going through a calibration. I've already calibrated this unit to kind of save time and so that we don't have to hear the air making a bunch of noise, but we've gone through that step already. One thing that's it's equivalent to the single push button on the D400. And when you do that, that's for initial setup. Same as on the D400. If you go in and there's several menu changes you could make that if you go and you calibrate from this screen where this auto adjust is on the front screen with a single push button, you lose some of those settings. So there is an option to calibrate through the easy setup menu, which we'll go into now. If you want to go into something a little less basic, it'll get a little more detail on setup. What we'll do is we will go down to configuration. We'll click OK. It's going to put us into the configuration level. The first thing we're going to come up with is going to be easy setup. And we'll go through it real quick. We actually won't do it, but we'll go through and show the options. So we're going to select easy setup, and it's pretty straightforward. As you go through, you have a next and an exit, and oftentimes you'll see an edit. So we know that we're going to use English language. So we're going to go next actuator type. This is rotary. The two options are rotary, and if we hit edit, we can pick linear or rotary, but we're going to stay with rotary. We can hit next. We'll show vent position. Basically shows us what our failure mode is. Right now we want 0% to be the failure mode. Tight shut off. We're going to keep all these as factory settings, tight shut. Deadband approach, we want to keep that on fast. What the deadband approach is what it means is when you have a set point, it's going to try to get to that set point as fast as it can. Deadband calc is the same thing. It's kind of finding itself. Auto adjust mode. This is where we could go in and we could change. This is set on a full cal. If we go in and look at this, we have a full cal control, valve range, and a 0. Valve range would be a stroke cal where it goes open, close, finds a midpoint, goes. 0 is just going to give you a 0 position. It's going to vent all the air, and then it's just going to accept that as a calibration. That is 0. That's all you're trying to calibrate, so it's happy. We're going to go back to full. We cancel out because we don't want to make a change. And actually right now, what we'll do is next. And the next screen that comes up will allow you to start. You just press and hold start until it starts calibrating. At that point, you kind of walk away and give it a few minutes and come back and it should be calibrated. What we're going to do is we're going to back out into our menu structure here and going to look at a couple of the options we have to change. Couple things that the D500 does. It does have a few options available above the D400, and one of the things it will do is a partial stroke, which we'll go into in just a minute. But it is obviously a little more user-friendly as far as reading the menu structure. One of the things we're going to make sure we're going to go through now is we're going to go through and we're going to change this to reverse acting. So we're going to show the operation of the unit currently. So right now, we are in manual sensor. We're going to move this back to control. And if you notice, we have another option on the top here that is adaptive. That is just like the D400. If you have just the single control adapt, it's going to be a fixed calibration. When it ran through its calibration, it's not going to learn what it accepted as a calibration is where it's going to work. If we also go up and we click that adaptive, we hit OK, and you'll notice that both are clicked now. Now it's in adaptive control mode. So it is in that learning mode where if you have a really rough control curve, it'll help it's going to try to smooth that curve out. For purposes today, we're going to go ahead and just run it in standard mode, just standard control. So now we're in control mode. We're going to go back to our main screen. And right now we have 4 milliamps on the unit, and I'm going to give it 20 milliamps. And you'll see that we drive to 100%. So now we went 4 milliamps is clockwise, 20 milliamps is counterclockwise. Now what we're going to do is we're going to reverse the action of this unit. To get into the configuration level is just the same as getting into the calibration level. I'm going to press our button. We're going to go down to configuration. We'll click OK. We're in easy setup. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to scroll down till we get to device setup. Easy setup is a really abbreviated section that just gives you the basics, and then it goes through calibration, where if you go into device setup, you can go in much further, drill much further down into the positioner menu and get into a lot more of the controls. So what we're going to do is we're going to select the device setup, and what we're going to do is we're going to look at vent position. What vent position is the 0 position, and in the vent position means that whatever output 1 is connected to is vented to atmosphere. So currently output 1, as you can see, has no air on it, so it's vented to atmosphere. We're in the 0 position. We're fully clockwise. We're going to go in and we're going to change this. So we're going to select the vent position. We'll press edit. And we'll arrow down until we get to vent position 100%. We'll click OK. And we'll go back, and as we back out, now we're at 4 milliamps. Hard to show here. We're at 4 milliamps. And now the unit has driven to 100%, so fully counterclockwise. So now as we stroke to 20 milliamps, the unit is showing 100% signal, but it went counterclockwise. We can go in and we can change the display to change that to match. That would be one of the other settings. We'll go back. Let's go ahead and we're going to change this, or change it back to the original, so we can show the next setup. We're going to show. This is vent position select, edit, position 0. Okay. Now as we back out, so very similar. None of the changes take place until you actually exit back into the operating level, and once you get back into the operating level, then stroke as you expect. One of the things we kind of spoke about earlier, we're going to talk about partial stroke. Partial stroke is standard on the D500. Partial stroke is for when you have a critical service valve in a plant and they're required to operate it. It almost never operates, but they want to do a test to make sure, because as we know, one of the worst things you do of anything is just let it sit in one place, one position. So what partial stroke allows you to do is you can come in and you can set a schedule, and what it will do is it will only move the valve a little bit. So it just makes sure that it moves. We'll go in and we'll do a setup of that now. So we're going to go back into our configuration level. And what we're going to go is we're going to go into the diagnostics level. Select diagnostics. If you notice, the first thing on the screen is partial stroke. You'll also see that we show a histogram, travel counter, and a movement counter. What those are doing is those are some of the things that this unit will do. In particular, histogram shows you a history of what the valve has done, open, closed. There's some alarms you can set. The travel counter is just that. It counts every time it goes to stroke a certain amount. And movement counter is literally every time it goes to move, it counts a movement. But what we're speaking of now is we're going to look at the histogram particularly, and we're going to select, partial stroke, I'm sorry. We're going to select partial stroke. And right now you can see we're looking at partial stroke configuration. Let's see, I'm going to do something here. Back out 1 second. I'm going to drive the unit to 100% so that we can do this properly. So on diagnostics, we're going to go to partial stroke. I'll show you what we've got set up on our configuration. So we're going to look at the vent amount. We're going to vent 5%, meaning we're going to let it, the valve normally runs 100% open all the time. We're going to let it vent 5% to make sure that it moves that 5% when we need it to go close, that it will go close. And the next thing we'll set up is we've got it set at 5%. So that's our vent percentage. We're going to look at our dead time. Basically, the dead time is how long it's going to take to act. And then we have an overall test time. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at our dead time, and we've got it set at 10,000 milliseconds. And we have our timeout value set at 10 seconds. So what we'll do now is we're going to back up and we're going to go down. We're going to highlight start now. The interval is where you can set the time that you can set it over, every 20 minutes or there's however you're going to set it. We're going to select the start now. Start the test. So what the test did was it tried to move. It moved its 5% and it came back to its correct position. So now it has gone through a partial stroke test. So it knows that once the valve, when you try to get it to move, it will try to move. So now it is accepted that as good. So we're going to go back to the main screen. Go to our operating level. Oftentimes, this electronic device, like any other, oftentimes what you'll get is the first question first thing anybody tells you is, have you tried to power the unit on or off when you're having issues with it? It does have a processor. Occasionally, you can go ahead and you can just reset the device by turning it off and turning it back on. And you can do that by simply pulling a wire, or you can do where you press all 4 buttons at one time. Press up 4 at one time. Let's get back. But what it does is when you press all 4 buttons, hold them down for a couple of seconds, and basically all it does is power the unit off. It'll power the unit off, power it back on again, and will bring us back up into our control level, same place we were before.
Scott, does the D500 store the partial stroke in history for verification?
If it does not pass, it will give you an alarm that it did pass. So I don't know how far back it will go, but if it does fail, you do have to go in and acknowledge it. If it does fail, it will show up as an alarm, and that will be in the diagnostics. So if we pull up, we can go to the operator menu. So I'll do it. So if we're in our main screen, the right side gets us into our operating mode. The left-hand button gets us into our operator menu. So there's diagnostic, operator page. So if we go into diagnostics, currently we show that all alarms are clear. Currently I'm reading a feedback on this unit. If I pull the feedback, we can back out, select it again, and we will see that now I'm showing an analog output power failure. So it'd be a similar alarm if it did not pass. So what that is I unhooked one of the 2 wires off of the feedback. If I were to hook the second wire back up, you'll see that on this particular alarm, it will go away because now it sees that there is power back on that unit again. But there will be something in the histogram will show you that there was an error. This unit, just like on the D400, there is a way to go in to do a factory reset. It's a little more involved. Something they kind of hide to make sure you don't accidentally change it. At this point, does anybody have any questions and anything they need to go over? Because right now, we've gone through most of the things other than actually showing the factory setting, which we can go by. Everything we've accomplished today, we've accomplished by using the push buttons. All you need is power. Like I think Bob has said, there is some stuff we have available, free software available that we can go in and make any of these changes using a simple handheld laptop or simple device. Joe, good question. The standard on the D500 is a fail-safe unit, meaning it's going to be open or closed, but there is not a fail-free setting. There is a couple of different ways you can achieve that. You can order a unit that is a fail-freeze unit, and what the fail-freeze on the D400 and D500 is the same feature. That what it is when it loses signal, the valve will fail in place because the positioner has locked in place. So oftentimes double acting is used to do that, but even on a single acting with a fail freeze D500, if you lose signal, it's going to lock air inside that actuator and freeze it in place. All right. So one thing to look at. The D500 is a standard unit that accepts only Hart and 4 to 20. The 400 has Fil-Bus, Profibus available. The D500 is only Hart and 4 to 20. That comes up pretty regular, quite often. And then also one of the other limitations is that it is intrinsic safety only. It does not have an explosion-proof housing. All these things being said, I think today, unless we've got some other questions, we'll give everybody a few seconds to see if they've got any questions or anything they want to know about the unit. I think Carly's got a couple of questions to ask everyone here in just 1 second. But if everybody is good right now, I'm going to hand it off to Carly.
Okay. While we wait and see if anyone has any questions, I can tell you a little bit about our social medias. Make sure you follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and follow our YouTube channel. We update those quite often, so there you'll stay updated and you'll get in the know of what videos are coming up next. Also, if you have an idea of a video that you would like to see, feel free to email us or message us on any of those social medias, and we'll do our best to help you out. And we'd love any ideas at all. If you have any questions after this video, feel free to email us, give us a call. Our website and our phone number are both in the description of this video below, so feel free to call us anytime. And that's Bob. I don't think we have any other questions, so I will go ahead and ask my questions for you. Okay, the first question is the D500 offered in Fil-Bus communication? Okay, David answered no. That is correct. Okay.
You're correct, David. Like I said a little bit before, the D500 is available only with Hart. It is also available no communication. The Profibus and Fil-Bus are not available currently.
Okay, question number 2. What is the maximum supply pressure for a D500?
Jason is correct. Even though it has a much higher maximum air pressure rating than the D400, we would really like to see filter regulators put on these units anytime you can, just because it's going to extend the life of the positioner. So even though most of the time, it wouldn't require to get down to that 145, very few air systems are going to be much higher than that. The 145 does help, but we would like to see filter regulators put on these as much as possible. But you are correct, Jason, it is 145. And David.
Okay, and the last question I have for you is the D500 available in the explosion-proof housing?
Sean is the first with the correct of no. It is not available with an explosion-proof housing. It's a little bit of a trick question in that it is available with explosion protection, but that is only an IS rating. meaning that the Zener barriers have to be installed, and that's an installation that is outside of the positioner itself. So the correct answer is no, but explosion protection is available, but not through an explosion-proof housing. Bob asks, is the D500 repairable? That is a kind of a long answer to that. Is it technically is repairable. There are parts that are replaceable inside the unit, but oftentimes the cost of the parts is beyond what is reasonable. So to be honest, I would say the D500 is really not repairable, but there are some things you can look at, some troubleshooting we can do to determine if it's the D500 or if it's another component in the valve assembly. But the short answer is it's really not repairable.
All right. Thank you for coming out this week. Next week we're gonna have our V100 R100 video, same time next Tuesday, 1:30 on our YouTube channel. Be looking out on our social medias for the link. And if you have any questions, feel free to call us, and thank you for coming out.